All right, today we're diving into a really fascinating perspective on faith. It's one that kind of flips the script on what many people think is most important. The central idea that what you know about God internally is way more valuable than chasing after external blessings or miracles. So let's break down exactly what that means. So let's just jump right in with the core question this whole idea is built on. Think about it. What's really more valuable for you in the long run? Is it getting that one-time miracle that fixes a problem you have right now? Or is it understanding a deep truth that gives you the tools to handle any problem that comes your way tomorrow and the day after that? Okay, so the source material we're looking at lays out two totally different ways to approach this. On one hand, you've got this path where you're always chasing after blessings, always running, always trying to get something. But then there's this other path. And on this one, if you focus on seeking divine knowledge first, well, the argument is that those blessings actually start chasing you. It's a complete flip in how things work, a real shift in spiritual dynamics. So here's how we're going to tackle this. We've got 5 main parts. First up, we'll look at why knowledge gets put above miracles. Then we'll get into this cool metaphor of a shadow versus the actual reality. After that, we'll see how this shifts someone from fear to courage, connect it all to political responsibility, and then finally, we'll paint a picture of what this transformed spiritual person looks like. All right, let's get into part 1, knowledge over miracles. This is all about why understanding God's nature and his ways is seen as the absolute top priority for a believer, even more important than just getting stuff from him. So here's the deal. This divine knowledge, it isn't just about learning facts for a test. It's presented as active power. The idea is it gives you a kind of authority or dominion over spiritual opposition. Why? Because while an enemy might not be scared of your spiritual gifts, they are supposedly terrified of the truth that you know and hold on to. And this knowledge, it just changes everything. It completely flips the script, right? Blessings stop being something you chase and instead become a natural result of you chasing after God. And your prayers, they transform from this, laundry list of I want this, I need that, into something much more focused on God himself. And we're not talking about small stuff here. The stakes are incredibly high. The source hammers this point home with a really powerful quote. The message is clear. Ignoring this pursuit of knowledge isn't just risky, it's dangerous. It suggests that spiritual destruction isn't just a maybe, it's pretty much a guarantee for anyone who doesn't have that solid foundation of divine knowledge. Okay, so let's keep building on that. This next part is where we get to the core metaphor of this whole perspective, and it's a really powerful one. It's all about the difference between a shadow, external rituals, and the actual reality of what's going on inside spiritually. Now, the key word you need to know here is paramartum. It's defined as the ultimate spiritual meaning, basically the actual reality behind a physical tradition. And look, the point isn't to just throw out all customs. No, it's about getting to the substance that those customs were always supposed to be pointing to in the first place. And to make this crystal clear, the source gives a really vivid example. It talks about the batu, or bindi, and calls it a shadow. Think about it. It's a physical, external sign of your faith, right? But it's also temporary. A little bit of water, and poof, it's gone. It can be wiped away in a second. It's a powerful symbol, for sure, but it's not the actual substance. And that just sets up the contrast perfectly. So if that external symbol is the temporary shadow, then the actual reality is something completely different. It's described as a permanent, unerasable seal. It's something you literally can't wash away because it's not on your skin. It's deep inside your spirit. So what is this unerasable seal? Well, it's identified as the seal of Christ's blood. And it's not something a person does to themselves. The idea is that it's an internal mark placed there by God. And this seal is said to hold real divine power. Power over sin, over darkness, and even over your own personal weaknesses. This is the permanent reality that the temporary shadow was pointing to all along. The source actually breaks this down even further using a kind of theological framework. It basically sorts the old law of Moses into 3 buckets. First, you have the abolished law. These are those ceremonial rituals, the shadows we've been talking about, that were set aside. Then there's the fulfilled law. This is the moral core, stuff like the 10 Commandments, where the deeper meaning is now what matters. And finally, there's the remaining law, which is all about prophecy that hasn't happened yet. Okay, so if this massive internal shift really happens, what does that actually feel like? How does it change a person day to day, emotionally? That's what our third section is all about. The psychological jump from a spirit of fear to one of courage. And what we see here are 2 completely opposite mindsets. On one side, you've got the spirit of fear. This, according to the source, leads to what it calls cowardly prayers. Always begging for problems to just disappear. But on the other side, there's the spirit of adoption. This gives you a new identity as a child of God. And with that comes the strength and the know-how to not just run from your problems, but to stand up, fight them, and win. And what's the engine driving this change? It's that divine knowledge we've been talking about. It's the fuel for the whole transformation. It turns prayer from a timid plea for help into this proactive, intelligent use of spiritual authority. Basically, you stop asking for the storm to go away, and you start asking for the skill and strength to sail right through it. So, if this internal knowledge gives you courage instead of fear, where does that courage go? What does it do out in the real world? Well, that leads us right into section 4, where we look at how this kind of transformed faith is supposed to shape your public life and even your political responsibilities. And the source material doesn't pull any punches here. It lays out a really clear contrast. On one side, you have what it calls corrupt citizenship, things like selling your vote, or only voting based on your caste or for your party no matter what. And it puts that up against faith-led citizenship. And this, it argues, means you have to vote for integrity. You have to choose leaders based on whether they're actually committed to justice for the poor and the forgotten. And this idea of responsibility goes even further, right into patriotism. The source completely rejects the idea that your faith and your love for your country are two separate things. In fact, it argues the opposite, that a true, deep faith should naturally make you a better citizen. And it points to real-world examples to back it up, like active service in the military, the history of faith-based social reform, and all the essential services like schools and hospitals that are provided as a direct expression of that faith. All right, we're at our final section. Let's pull all these threads together. So after all this, what does this transformed spiritual person actually look like? What are the key traits, the real defining characteristics of someone who's living out this internal knowledge-based faith? Well, according to the source, there are a few really clear signs. First, they put gaining divine knowledge above everything else. It's their top priority. Second, their character is stable. They're not double-minded, praising God one minute and then complaining the next. Third, when conflict comes up, their go-to response isn't anger or getting even, it's patience and love. And maybe most important of all, they live their life based on that actual reality of who they are spiritually, not just going through the motions of tradition, the shadow. And that really brings us to the final thought, the big takeaway question. This whole journey, from a personal, internal faith all the way out to public action, it kind of leaves us with a challenging question for our own lives, doesn't it? How do our deepest beliefs, no matter what they are, actually show up in our public actions and in the role we play in our communities? It's a connection that's definitely worth thinking about.